Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. So today I will be taking you through the K1 visa interview process, experience, questions, name it all. As you know, for me, I go into details. I just don't do it so shallowly, if that's a word, but I'm gonna take you through everything that I went through, from the feelings, from the prep to the approval. So if you are at the process where you are preparing to go for the interview, this is the K1 visa interview. Normally it happens at the US embassy or the US consulate in your home country. I think for some countries they have to go to other countries to be able to sit for these interviews. Like I remember during my experience in Kenya, we had Ugandans coming into Kenya to sit or to do their interview, and I thought that was something it was very interesting. And I remember the lady I was chatting with, she mentioned that she had to book accommodations in Kenya and then decide after the interview was approved how long she was gonna stay in Kenya to collect her passport, because it stays with the embassy once you're approved for them to give you the visa. And so I thought that was a logistic, I don't know, complication. And so that was just interesting. I don't know if that's still what's happening, but so that's what happens. And the K1 interview process is just, how I would sum it up is for them to physically see you, do the final screens and checks, and then ask you a few questions about your relationship, about yourself. And once they're satisfied with your responses and all the documentations that you have shared with them, then they approve your K1 visa. So it is a very, very important step of this whole process. And this is the part where the beneficiary is the one fully participating in making sure that your visa is approved. So let's go into it. In terms of tips, I would say how I did it, or how my then fiance and I did it. Once I had like a week or 2 weeks to the actually it was a week to my interview, we had a list of questions that we had gotten online. And so what we would do in our, because we used to talk every day, so every day in our daily conversations, now we would take that time to go over and revise for the questions to be asked, or the questions that were potentially going to be asked at the interview. And these were questions about him mostly, because if it is about me, the beneficiary, I know most of the things about me, like where I was born, my age, and so on, what I do, where I work. That's easy to answer and it's easy to prepare. But the questions about the petitioner, these are questions that really have to be correct, and it's for them to be able to gauge if you fully or truly understand or know your fiance well. And so you need to be able to spend enough time to prepare for this interview for you to be confident enough to answer them confidently. And so that's what I will share with you during the last final days of your prep. Just take that time. And I remember he would ask me, what's my name, where was I born, where do I live, and you know the addresses. If you know the addresses in the US, they are a bit they're slightly different from where you might be coming from, and so you need enough time to be able to know how to say that without fumbling. And so that's why you need to keep on practicing. And then questions, he would ask me questions about his hobby, because they might want to know if you know your partner really well. Do you know what he likes to do in his free time? And so he would ask me, what are my hobbies? Then I would list a few that I knew. And you know, at that point he would correct me and I would go over it again until I was ready. And the following day we will start all over again. Or maybe we would tackle and split the questions, some that would ask a few questions about certain things and other questions about other things. And then again, he would randomly ask me just in the few days to the interview. And so I was really prepped and ready to answer questions about him to the best of my knowledge. So I'll link that document in the description below, and so use that to prep, and also do research online. Look for as many questions. Most of the resources online have like recurring questions that are somehow similar. Just try and look for something that maybe you feel like or you think you haven't covered yet, and prep for it in preparation for your interview. Another thing I'll say about the interview day: have enough sleep. So you have been preparing. It feels like an exam, because it actually sounds like an exam because it's like you're being tested and there's a pass and fail. That's the scary bit. There's a passing and the failing aspect, which it's scary. Even remembering it just feels very scary. But yeah, have enough sleep on the eve of your interview. When you wake up in the morning, I would recommend that you have a heavy breakfast, because you will spend a long time at the embassy, and once you are in, you don't have food, you don't have access to anything. Have your coffee, things that make you wake up, your coffee, your food. It will also help you to keep warm. Speaking of keeping warm, have a proper jacket, like wear something like a warm coat, because once you get there, you will be sitting outside, or there's a section, I remember, where we were waiting for our names to be called for the interview, and it's somewhat outside, yes, but then if it's cold and it's chilly, you don't want to mix nerves, being nervous and feeling cold. It's not a good combination. So have something warm, to have some coat to keep you warm. And then something else I would mention: on the day of the interview, be there at least 1 hour early, or an hour on time. Like, be there 1 hour prior to your interview time. I was there like 15 minutes, 30 minutes early, but by it was like I was already late, because there's several security checks that you have to go through. And I remember during my last security check, it was about 10 minutes to the interview, and there was no way I was gonna make it to be there within 10 minutes. But I remember asking one of the security guards, hey, like, I feel like I'm running late, my interview it's at this time, do I need to maybe cut through the line, do I need to be allowed to walk in? But then he assured me that since once you've been allowed to a certain point, you've already been counted in and they will not send you back. But before I got that confirmation, I was so anxious. So to save you all that, just be there early. Another thing I'll mention is don't carry any electronics. I knew of this rule. Like, I know you might be tempted to go there with your tablet or something else to keep you busy as you're waiting to be served, but yeah, they will not allow you to go into the gate or past the second security check with any of the electronics. I carried my earphones because I was like, this is not an electronic gadget. It's just like an accessory. But the lady, I remember, who was frisking me and checking me, she said, no, you're not allowed to walk past this point with that earphone, my earphones. And so I had to go outside the gate and then ask someone to help me keep it. And you will notice, like in Kenya, I don't know if this is the same in other countries, we have people who know of this rule, and they know people come there with their gadgets, and so they've started like a business where they store your electronic equipments for you, and then once you're done with your interview, they hand it over back to you. But you know, this is working on trust because you've never seen these people and you will never see them after that day. And so don't take that risk. Just leave everything at home. Go there with your phone, charged or not. You won't even need it, by the way, because they will keep it for you at some point. Yeah, so that's something I wanted to mention. And then when it comes to answering your questions, just be confident, be calm, be audible, very audible, and be precise, straight to the point. That way you will be able to convince them, I think. So let's go straight into the interview questions. So the questions they asked me, they asked question about me, about my fiance, about our relationship, and so on. Yeah, I think that's how they somewhat categorized them. And so the questions, how I've tried to remember to the best of my memory some of these questions. I had to sit down and remember the flow because I had noted down some, and then some of them I had to like try and fully remember what exactly I was asked. And so I'll try and share most of them. So just also, in addition to what I will share, take your time and go and research for any additional questions that you might be asked. Yeah. So on to the first question. They asked me what my name is. So I'm gonna act like the interviewer and you're the interviewee. You're the beneficiary. So this is how they presented the questions. What is your name? Where were you born? I think where you're born, like the city, I mentioned just the city, for example, Eldoret or Kisumu or Nairobi, and so on. If they ask you the hospital, like, you should be able to remember the hospital in which you were born. Depending on how they'll phrase it, just be ready. And then how old are you? Have you ever been arrested? Do you have any children? Have you been married before? Have you been to the United States, or have you ever been to the United States? Have you ever applied for a K1 visa in the past? Some questions will say, they'll ask you if you've ever applied for a visa to the US. Some of them, yeah, something around there. So just be ready. And you can tell some of them are just like yes or no. So if it's just a no, or if it's mostly no, you will see that it will be going so fast. But if you've been married before, maybe they might interject and ask, are you divorced? Do you have anything to support that you are divorced? So have your documentation ready, just to be like, yes, I was married before, I'm now divorced, and these are the papers to show that I'm divorced. See, simple. If you have children, I'm not so sure how the questions around about children. So maybe you might need to do a bit more research on that aspect. And so for my fiance, they asked me, so what is his name, or what are his full names? How old is he? Where does he live? Other times they would ask you maybe, where was he born? Has he been married before? Where does he work? Yeah. So in other questions, they might, if it's maybe he has been married before, like, is he divorced? When was he divorced? Does he have children? In my case, it was no. If they ask me that, I feel like I was asked that, like, does he have any children? I said no. So that was a quick one. If your partner has children, you should be able to know their names, have enough information also about the kids, just in case, how old they are, maybe even their names. Do they go to school? Things that you should know about your partner. Okay. And then when it came to our relationship, they asked me where we met, and I was able to say we met online on an online site called, then I shared the name. Then asked me, have we physically met? I told him yes. When and where? Then I was able to elaborate. We met for the first time when he came to Kenya, and we spent enough time in Nairobi, and we also stayed in Diani or in Mombasa for like in the next week. But in fact, just even saying that out loud, I feel like I did elaborate a bit too much. But yeah, I was able to say yes, we met when he came to Kenya, and he stayed in Nairobi and also in Diani. And then I also was able to share when the subsequent times he also came to Kenya, and just all the places, all the times he came and where we spent, just the time and where, not to overcomplicate my answers. And then there was this last question, which I feel like it was a gotcha question, because I had not seen this question in most of my prep. In all the resources and all the studies online, I had not seen this question, and so I had not prepared for it. And as you know, for people who like to pass exams, you don't want to meet a question you have not studied for. And so the question was, has he ever sent you money? I said yes, you know. And then the follow-up question was, how much? I took a pause. I remember taking a pause, and then I was like trying to sum it up in my head quickly. And he allowed me, he gave me enough time to try and just think of all the times I've received money from him. And then I was able to give him like an approximation or an estimation. So I said, for example, this is an example. I said, for example, 100. And because I was panicking, I remember telling him, like, for example, 100 Kenya shillings. And so he paused, and then he looked at me, and then he asked again, 100 Kenya shillings. And I corrected him immediately. Now, from when he repeated my answer, that's when I learned what I had said wrongly. I said 100 shillings instead of 100,000, and so he got scared. He sent you only 100. Maybe that would have been a red flag or something. But then he kind of like laughed lightly about it, and yeah, he was like done asking me questions. And then he also asked me for my updated intent to marry. This is something that was asked during the initial petition for people who have done that stage, if like for the intent to marry. So I was asked for the updated version, and good thing I had printed my updated intent to marry, which says I intend to marry him within 90 days upon arrival, and so on. And I also had his copy in case they would have asked me to share his. Yeah. And then he also asked me if I was aware that that was actually a requirement, that I would be required to get married within 90 days, and if I had any objections about it. I told him I was aware and I was okay with that. I'd like to say, for me, I went there ready. I can share with you like the documentations that I had gone there with, like to show like proof of our relationship, because you're continuing to show them that your relationship is bona fide. And so this, I'm not lying, these are my documents. Like, these are the supporting documentations that I had gone there with. I just didn't want to go there and be asked for something and not be able to show supporting documentations, because in some cases they would ask you, and how do you communicate? And so you'll have to say something like, we communicate over WhatsApp. And so I had enough papers to show our chats, And so if they would have asked me, how do you communicate? I would just be ready to say, hey, we communicate on WhatsApp, and these are our chats, and so on. When it comes to his employment, where he works, I had his employment, what does it call, like evidence of employment or contract or something, to show that where he's working. I also had pictures like of all the additional times we met in Kenya or wherever, like all of our itinerary, everything that we did. It's just like the petition, but then this was now all the other supporting documentations even after the petition, to show that there was a continuous communication even after we had petitioned for the I-129F. So I just have everything ready. I'm also going through my papers. I even had the approved petition. I carried it. I also had what else did I have in here? Like I had so many things. Like I just didn't want to be caught flat-footed or without being able to support anything about the relationship. And so even maybe just to add, when you're going there, when you've been invited when you get a letter from the embassy, they share with you a list of requirements or a list of documents that they want you to present during that day. And some of those documents were my passport, like your passport, the beneficiary's valid passport, plus copies. I would just say have the passport plus additional copies, passport size photos, the 2x2, birth certificate, your birth certificate, original and copies, divorce certificates, original and copies, police certificate or police clearance or certificate of good conduct, depending on how they call it in your country, original, and from all the countries you have resided, naturalization certificate or copy of US passport for the petitioner. Now this is for the one who is in the US. For me, I carried anything that identified him. I had his driver's license copy, I had a copy of his driver's license, I had a copy of his passport, I had a copy of his birth certificate, I had everything. And then what else did they ask for? Form I-134, which is a declaration of support, and this one is something, this document you have to sign it. Most of us who were there, we had not signed it because we had not seen where we were required to sign, but just have a pen in case they ask you to sign. They also have pens. They will double check if you have signed that declaration of support. They also wanted the taxes or the filed tax returns for the US petitioner. For me, I submitted for the previous 3 years because it's an annual thing, because you file once a year, and so I had mine for all the previous 3 years. Paychecks or paycheck stubs, I had also those ones for my petitioner who is in the US. And like I had said, I had additional pictures, charts, itinerary, and in fact for our case, if they had some questions, will tell you that you need to prepare for like in terms of wedding. They might ask you, have you maybe done any wedding prep? As we were ready to answer that question, they didn't ask me, but I had revised for it. So we had already somewhat paid for the chapel where we were going to like get married in, and so we had like sort of made a booking. We didn't have a day because we don't know which day we were going to like get married, because it was all depending on the approval date of the visa. But yeah, we had already locked down and we had the package for the wedding chapel. So if they had asked me, have you done any wedding prep, I would just share with them, yes, and this is the package that we have selected, and this is the church or the place we'll be getting married at. We also had done premarital counseling, which is like what you have to go through, like that counseling before the wedding. And we had like chats and conversations with our marriage counselor. We also had like paid, because for you to meet a married counselor, I think you have to pay a fee. And so we had the check that we had given her, like anything that did show that we were prepping for the wedding, I was ready to share all that. So I would say just be safe, have everything. If they ask anything that you're saying, how I'll put it, anything that you're going to profess, have something to prove or to show for it. I think the last bit was wasn't sure if I had passed. So he was like, yeah, I think we have everything covered. And so I remember asking him, so have I passed? and he told me, yeah, everything looks good, but we are, so he was looking at the computer. And that's another thing that I forgot to mention. The format or the setting of the interview, it's like a bank. It's the way you go to a bank and then you have different tellers. We don't have seats. I was watching another lady who was saying that during her interview she had to go and she was sitting down and she was being interviewed. In my experience, we were standing. You just go to your own booth, wherever the teller person that you have been assigned to, where your number has been called. And then that time when you're giving out your answers or you're sharing your answers, someone else is also in the next place, in the next booth, sharing their own answers. So you have to speak up, and that's why I said you have to be audible, because everybody is supporting and justifying their case. And yeah, you don't have time to be shy or because somebody might actually be maybe listening in too, but nobody has the time because everybody is actually fighting for their own case. So that's how it looks like. And so I remember just him. And then he was also like, when he was asking me questions, I remember he was spending most of the time looking at his computer. So he would ask me a question, then he would listen in, and then when I would start answering, I remember him doing things on his computer. So I don't know if he was now keying in my information. Like, I don't remember I could not see what he was doing. That's the thing. And so when I asked him, so have I passed? He was like, hey, your medical results are yet to reflect. And then he kept on going on his computer, and I was like, wait, just a minute, it's just come in, your medical results are here and looks like everything looks good. So what's gonna happen? So at that time, that's when they took the passport photos, every other thing that they wanted to take. I can't remember fully, but that's when they took everything. And then he gave me this is what you're working for. This is now like the pass card. It's green in color. So when people would walk out of the door with this, we would just like celebrate and be happy for them. So this is what you're working for. It just says congratulations, your visa has been approved. It has like information about your courier services, because you leave your passport with them, and they will be able to have your visa imprinted on your passport. And then in addition to this, they also gave us like this booklet. It just sort of gives you like the procedures to follow when you are faced with a domestic violence. I think now this is good for our rights. You can come to the US and be abused, be a victim of abuse. So this one sort of stipulates where and whom you need to reach out, and whom you need to reach out to for additional support. And so you go home with this, and you start deciding and prepping for when you would book your flight to travel to the US. So I hope I have shared everything and anything in detail. If in case anyone has any additional questions that they were asked, please leave all of them in the comments for other people to learn from. But this was the full experience. Thanks for watching. Until next time.